And now, the Rink Rap podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
Welcome back to Rink Rap here at Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerny, and it is really, really cool to be joined by Tony Granato, former New York Ranger, four-time 30-goal scorer in the NHL, former NHL head coach, former U.S. Olympian, former U.S. Olympic coach. I could go down. Your resume is a lot cooler than mine is, that's for sure.
But Tony, thanks for having me, Jim. It's nice to be part of your show today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us and for squeezing us in. I know you got a busy day. It's the Olympics. You're working over at NHL Network. You got the women's gold medal game today. But has your head stopped spinning around after those quarterfinal men's games yesterday? Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, unbelievable. And, it's exciting from the standpoint that, we've been waiting for this for a year because that little preview last year from the Four Nations on just how that whole thing went down. The excitement and the buildup certainly has lived up to it as far as what we've gotten, what we've expected. They've been great games. The first, preliminary rounds there when U.S. and Canada kind of walked through their games. I think that was all kind of predictable just based on the fact that the U.S. and Canada are loaded. And eventually they'd have to play a couple teams when the crossovers happened. And last night they both got those teams where they had to be really sharp to get it done. And both exciting games, both games you're sitting at the edge of your seat going, oh no, this can't end. The destination for U.S. having to play Canada again, the gold medal game has to happen. So it was pretty nervous to get through those games yesterday, but a credit to all the teams on how competitive it is. When you get into an Olympic competition like that and you wear your country's sweaters, you're going to perform at your best. And that's what we saw yesterday.
Yeah. And if you can speak to this, because, I know there's a lot that goes into a game-winning overtime goal, and we saw 3 of them in the quarterfinals yesterday. But speaking to the U.S. and Canada, there's so much that goes on around to make those goals happen. There has to be a big save here. Somebody's got to, do a flyby and kind of take the goalie's attention away there. There's so much that goes into it, but you can't look away from the great individual efforts by Mitch Marner for Team Canada and, of course, Quinn Hughes with Team USA. If you can just speak to those moments for each of those, phenomenal players stepping up on the biggest stage and making a phenomenal individual play.
Yeah, they were. And, I think the good thing is, from the NHL standpoint, the 3-on-3 experience that our players have by having so many 3-on-3 games, gives them that much more confidence to know how to be able to make those plays, be ready for those moments. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of having to go 3-on-3 in Olympic competition to have an elimination game. Yeah. But that's the rules. I was part of it in 2018 as a coach. We lost to the Czechs, and it was the same format. Quarterfinals, we had a beautiful 3-3 game with the Czechs. We were playing really well, kind of controlling the game. Go to overtime, get 10 minutes of overtime, and we're still tied, and then we go to a shootout. And then we lost. Obviously, when you lose and you're on the losing end of a shootout, you're questioning why would you have an elimination game go to a shootout, but it did. So, the game of 3-on-3 is spectacular. It was spectacular yesterday because the 2 teams we wanted to win won. But in the big picture, I would love to see it continue to go 5-on-5 and grind it out. And if it takes 2 periods or 3 periods of overtime to grind out a win, that's what it takes. But nonetheless, it was exciting. Both Canada and the U.S. Advance, and we're getting a little closer to that rematch.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yesterday, I was on the flip side of the mic. I was a guest on a talk program, and the host totally ignored that. The United States is playing Sweden, and he said, what's it going to take for Sweden to come up big and upset the United States? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute here. Have you looked at Sweden? Do you see their roster? Like, this is a heck of a team. I think the U.S. is a little bit better. I had them winning 4-3. I was off a couple goals each side, but I thought it'd be a 1-goal game. But you can't underestimate how great these other teams are, because when the NHL players come over, that means every country. This is such an international game that we're involved in here. And I was actually a little surprised. Everybody's so U.S., well, at least here in North America, are so U.S. Canada centric. And I'm like, wait a minute, Finland's pretty darn good. Sweden's pretty darn good here. Slovakia is on a great run. These are great teams all around. I guess the bigger point here I'm trying to make and ask your opinion about is, can you speak to the excellence that we see out there on the stage, even the teams that are losing or had to play, qualifying games or lost in the quarters, how just how outstanding those lineups are, as well as US and Canada.
Yeah. And I think, it shows the health of our game overall worldwide is, the competition continues to get better. We're getting better. Let's look at the United States. We've gotten way better. We've improved since, the 1980 Miracle team was kind of the kickstart of, okay, American hockey. We got these young players that are all energetic and they can play. And that kind of, built and built and built. And then you see it carry over into the women's side, because the women, they didn't have hockey in the early 80s as far as, being able to compete at an international level, because there wasn't women's hockey. And then, so that's grown as well. So I just think the health of our game and where it's come for us to be able to go to tournaments like this with the best in the world, and now go into it. And, I don't want to say we should win every tournament, but we should expect to at least compete with the world's best. And that's what this tournament is showing again. So, who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 days, but it's sure exciting that these 4 teams are all going to be part of it.
Yeah. So do you think we're going to get US-Canada gold medal game? And if so, I listen, I know you bleed red, white, and blue there, but do you think the United States is going to win this thing?
The answer to both those questions are yes. Canada obviously very easily could win the gold medal. Their team was loaded. The Hellebuck factor and the depth in the goaltending position, the pressure that's going to be on Binnington again. And Binnington has stepped up. He's done what he's needed to do to get him to this position again. But I still think we have a little bit of an edge there. I'm going to hope that that's going to be the difference maker if they do meet in the gold medal game. Last year's Four Nations things, flip a coin. Those two teams went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Again, one of the most entertaining hockey games ever played, and it had to be decided in overtime on a Marner to McDavid play. So I expect it'll be the same type of energy, the same type of game. Obviously, the Tkachuk and Bennett and Tkachuk and all the other things, the sideshow that happened to start the game won't happen because it's the Olympics. Yeah. But the same competitiveness and the same spirit and the same energy will be part of that game if it does happen.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And I mentioned this at the beginning. You played in the 1988 Olympics, and I have a couple questions about that. But just on a broader picture, and I know there are, different years, different times of your life and everything. Where did you feel the more pressure? Was it being an Olympic athlete and playing in the games, or was it being responsible for this group and coaching them? And I guess 1B of that question is, was one experience better for you than the other? Taking in the entire Olympic experience.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with that one. Anytime you go to an Olympic, whether you're a competitor on the ice, whether you're a coach, whether you're a fan, whether you're going to cheer, my situation, I went to cheer my sister on 2 times at 2 different Olympics. Yeah. The Olympics are something so special and so unique and so beautiful. I don't think you think of pressure in that moment. I think you think of how lucky and honored you are to have that opportunity, and you just want to make the most of it. I think as it's gone along, I would say, let's go back. I'll go back. The pressure probably was the first one. It was the first time in North America after the 80 team won. They had the 84 in Sarajevo, 88 back in Alberta, so back in North America. We probably felt a little bit of pressure because they built our team up as being maybe the second miracle team. We had Brian Leetch, we had Kevin Stevens, Peter Laviolette, Corey Millen. We had a Mike Richter. We had a great team. We were young. Were we probably as talented as the 1980 team? when it's all said and done, yeah, we might have been as talented as the A team, but that part of having to live up to that probably was the most pressure. After that, the 2014 games, when we had the NHL guys there and we lost in the 1-0 game to Canada in Sochi.
Yep.
That's the game where I felt like, that moment we had that opportunity. I thought we were set and ready to beat Canada at that time. And Carey Price outdueled Jonathan Quick. We lost 1-0 in that one. And then and the one I coached in 2018, we were all that was the first year that they went back to amateurs. And it happened real fast because the NHL decided in June. So we had to put together a team in a really short period of time. And so we took a lot of players that were playing professionally in Europe. We took 4 college kids. We took a few guys from the minors that were on AHL deals, not NHL deals or contracts. And we kind of pieced together a team that came really close to having a Special Olympics. So that was probably the most rewarding one, because we took a bunch of players that had no idea, the exception of Brian Gianta. Brian Gianta retired that year. He was our captain. Other than that, the guys we pulled out were guys, when we called them up and said, do you have a chance to be on our Olympic team? Can you send your birth certificate in and all this other thing in? So we're going to want to register you. That was their greatest moment of maybe their hockey career. Have that phone call, let alone finally getting the Olympics. So we patched together a team that came really close to doing something special. But every one of those experiences, I'm kind of clumping them all together. Watching my sister win in 1998, the first women's gold medal, was something that probably, I look back on my most memorable hockey moment, because I sat there and watched my little sister, who had watched me for years and years and years, do all these things in hockey, whether it be the Olympics, whether it be my pro games. She was always there in the stands, and I'm thinking, man, oh man, she's finally out on the ice doing what she loves to do in the same fashion that, I had that opportunity, to play hockey and do what I love to do for all those years. She's finally, getting an opportunity to do it at that level was really remarkable.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll just build off that segue, because the women's game has come so far since, and that rivalry. And I laughed. They had Katie Million was a guest on the program a couple of weeks ago, and I had her laughing. I said, I'm a big believer that U.S. Canada hockey, it's as great a sports rivalry as there is. And then I paused. I said, I was telling her a story how I was on another show talking about that. I said, I paused and I threw the other person off, because I said, but not the men. Yeah, that's intense. It's the women. I mean, that is crazy intense. And the level of play now stretching back, we're talking almost 20 years since that, that 98 Olympics, and every Olympics, it's these teams, head to head. And it is beyond what the NHL players, as much as I respect them, because of the history of it and how much better they've been than everybody else. That rivalry is unparalleled, I think, in sports. What do you think?
I can't argue that. I mean, I watched it and felt it with the intensity of being around my sister and her teammates and cheering for them and seeing those two teams go at it. So I think what it's done, though, and if you go way back in the 90s, women's sports was okay. Some girls are playing over there and whatever. The respect that the game has grown to now, where you got a professional league, you got all of these athletes that are just spectacular athletes, and the women's game is a little bit different than the men's game, but it certainly is entertaining in lots of different ways. That the respect that they've gotten now, from the standpoint that people are paying to come see them play. There's professional teams all over, and the best thing about that is too, the growth of youth hockey in the United States in particular, for what the women and young girls now they want to play hockey. And that's looking back 35 40 years ago when Cammie was doing it, you thought, man, I don't know if that'll ever catch where girls are going to be going to the rink and carrying their bags and grinding it out like the boys and men do. But they've certainly been really remarkable on what they've done to grow the game. And it's a big part of our game and the NHL game too. Let's not kid ourselves. Half the fans are women, and half the women fans know just as much as the men that are come to the games too. They're into it. They know it. They understand it. And it's grown our game because of the success that the youth hockey programs have had with girls being part of it.
And again, you just lead right into things that I'm thinking that I wanted to ask you about. To me, the biggest difference right now between the U.S. team and the Canadian team, and again, they're going to meet for the gold medal shortly after this interview, is younger, faster. The skill level of the U.S. team is incredible. Not saying that the Canadian team's not skilled or not a great team or don't have great champions on it. And don't have some young talent, but that young talent to be where they are now and mix, the great veterans that have won medals before with what is now, we're up to seven college players are on that team right now. So that's your mix. And not only players, but playing vital key roles on that team. To me, you talk about speaking to the youth game growing and the women and the girls in the youth game growing. There's Exhibit A right there. You can watch it. If you've been watching anybody who's been watching the Olympics or the rivalry series or, those college players right now are what set apart, I think, the difference between the United States and Canada heading into the gold medal game today. Do you agree?
100%. And one of the things that's really, I think, special about the college game, I'm just going to give you the University of Wisconsin and Mark Johnson. Mark Johnson was our hero in 1980, and he's been coaching women since, I'm going to tell you, the year 2000, and it's got early 2000s. And Mark has stayed with the women because he's enjoyed the growth and what he's been able to do as far as helping young, women athletes reach their goals and develop them. So it's been fun to watch the coaches that have jumped on board. You had Kevin Dineen running the Olympic team with Canada a few years ago. You've got lots of men that have jumped on the benches and to be coaches and to help the women's game grow. And Mark Johnson's the one that I keep thinking of that's had a tremendous impact on the growth of USA Hockey. And everybody, he's one of the most humble people to begin with. So you'd have a tough time, getting him to talk about the gold medal thing and everything he's done in the game of hockey. But his contribution to what he's done for women's hockey is really, really a special thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've always followed the women's game, but it's only been the last couple of years that I've really delved into it. One of the things I do is I work on the Princeton broadcast for, ECAC games, and, see, some of the great players coming through there. And every year it seems like, that league is better and better. And that's just part of the bigger whole, at the college level with the Wisconsins and Ohio States and Minnesotas and all that. It's really, you feel like you're part of this groundswell, even though it's been going on now, as you point out, like Mark Johnson's been coaching a couple decades, Wisconsin there. But for me, like, I feel like I still kind of jumped on the back of the train at a good time because it's just getting better and better by the year. It's very cool for sure. And I was going to say, just segueing out of that, I know you have probably a lot more to say on it, but I don't want to take up all your time here, was to transition, because this is, a Rangers community. This where this website, where this podcast airs on this website and everything. So when fans heard that you were coming on the show, the most probably the question that they were asking me to ask you more than anything, not that I hadn't thought of it already, was, does Tony believe that he should have won Rookie of the Year?
No.
The Calder Trophy winner instead of Brian Leetch? Because come on, like, you could be as humble as you like. That was a heck of a rookie season for Tony Granato.
I enjoyed every second of it. I had great teammates. I had the opportunity to play with Leetchy, who I watched. And, just to be mentioned and be at the ceremonies as whatever I was, third or whatever, runner-up or whatever it was, I watched Brian. And Brian dominated that position and was so special and continued to be for the year, the many, many years, and the cup and everything else that he was part of. So I was just happy to be along for the ride and kind of jumped on the coattails of the rookie season that Brian had. I look back on that year. And again, when we left the Olympic team there, we had 6 draft picks that were Ranger picks, all on that same team. So Corey Millen, Kevin Miller, Peter Laviolette, Brian Leetch, and Mike Richter. And, after the Olympics happened, a couple of us signed, a couple of us went back to school. Brian went straight to the team. Peter Laviolette and myself and Mike Richter went down and played with the Denver Rangers, the Colorado Rangers, for the last, month and a half of that season. And then that next training camp, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to make the team, and had a good camp, and wasn't sure where I fit into the depth chart, but Bergie gave me a chance in some of the exhibition games, and I thought there was things that I gained confidence in through that Olympic year that maybe I could be part of that team. So I just was grateful to make it, and had a remarkable experience as being a Ranger for that year and a half, and lots of great memories of wearing that uniform and jersey and being out on that Garden ice.
So, boy, you cut me off on that one quick. You're like, no, are you kidding me?
Well,
there was some serious debate at the time, and we're not looking at entire careers. That one season, I mean, that was actually my very first season. I was just out of college myself, and I was covering the Rangers that year, and so I was at least at all the home games covering the team. And in the press box, there was this debate. Leetch was, even then, was the big name. He was the focus.
Sure.
But listen, in all fairness,
you
did. I know you're being very humble here, but that was an electric rookie season for you. And if I remember correctly, I still think you hold the franchise record for most goals scored by a rookie in a season.
I was an older rookie, so that is a harder record to break, because most guys. This is another series. Like the advantage I had of playing 4 years of college and then playing an Olympic year. I was small. I was 165 pounds. I think when I got to training camp, and it's not the best weight or size to try to jump into an NHL locker room and compete against that, and especially in that era. So that extra couple years that I got by playing college and playing that Olympic year gave me a chance physically to be ready for it. I had, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, my mom would probably say unfortunately, I had that mentality of being scared of nothing. So the big guys didn't scare me. The competitiveness of having to go against, bigger, tougher, stronger players was never something that I would shy away from. And I think that built up, and I built confidence in that, through the experiences I had prior to getting, to the NHL. So, and this is totally being honest, had I tried, or had I not had college and had to play and sign professionally at 20 or 21, I don't know if I would have made it, because I don't know if I could have grinded it out and played that way in that style in the minors. So progressively on how, my career kind of developed and grew was because of those extra years of playing college and having that opportunity to be ready for when I got there. And I think that's, I'm going to talk a little bit about college kids now and the hurry to get to the NHL. Don't be in a hurry. That's the best advice you could give to somebody, because if you're not ready, you might not ever make it. But if you're over prepared and you do the extra and you go in, maybe a year more of preparation than you thought you needed, that extra year is only going to help you, and probably going to play longer and play more games because you were more patient. And that's really hard for young kids to do that are drafted. As soon as you get drafted, you want to play in the NHL. The first day you're drafted, you're like, give me a jersey, let me go play. And then you look at they got a pretty good team already. There's already prospects and guys in the minors and in their system. And then there's other draft picks that are, all trying to get that same spot or trying to make that team as well. So So the longer you can build your game up and your confidence and really grow up as a young person to be ready for that opportunity, I think that's what helped me and being ready for when I did get there.
Yeah. One more Ranger question for you. As you pointed out, you're like, well, it was a great year and a half. Here, there might be a generation of Ranger fans here saying, oh, Jim's building up Tony Granato. He had this amazing rookie season. Wait, year and a half? He's only there a year and a half? Walk me through when you found out that you were part of that Bernie Nichols trade, a massive trade at the time. The Rangers were saying one of the biggest trades in franchise history. Thomas Sandstrom going to LA, you got to play with Gretzky, of course, over there. So it's made it to a conference final. But in that moment, you're up to this great start, your buddies, Leetch and some of those other guys you played with in the Olympics, they're in New York, they're your friends, you're kind of growing up with them. And then boom, somebody takes it out from underneath you and says, hey, Tony, we're going to send you to LA. Not the worst spot to go, but you're being traded. What were your emotions at that time?
It happened over the All-Star break. I was back actually in Madison. Went back to visit for a few days and get a little break as the All-Star game went on. And I learned of it there. There were rumors going in there. We weren't, Roger Nielsen came in, took over for Bergie, who was there the year before. There was lots of changes on how we were playing. And Neil Smith took over for Phil as well. So I think that was just one of those situations where, the Rangers needed to get better. They needed to make a move. And obviously, I think it worked out great for the Rangers. They got Bernie. Bernie ended up going in the trade for Mess. Yeah. But to be a player and be traded for the first time, there's mixed emotions to it. Obviously, the first year in New York went great. The second year, I was battling a little bit of an injury that kind of, I didn't really feel I ever got to my game, for any consistent period of time that second year. So I wasn't totally surprised because again, there were rumors that, that Neil was tracking down. He wanted a big goal scorer. And so I was kind of prepared, but on the other flip side of it, it might've been the greatest thing that ever happened to me from the standpoint that I got a chance to go to LA. I got a chance, like you said, to play with Wayne. That experience and having the opportunity to go out to LA and play with those players there. We had Luke Robitaille, we had Blakey, I had Larry Robinson, Dave Taylor, Yari Curry. I go on and on of Hall of Famers that I played with there too. You're grateful for every opportunity you have. You try to keep pinching yourself to say, okay, today I'm going to go to practice and I'm going to be on the line with Gretzky and Curry. And last year I was with Brian Leetch, Kelly Kissel, and Ron Greshner, and Marcel Dion, and Guy Lafleur, and Chris Nyland, and Mike Richter, and all that stuff. So, like you just as a hockey player, when you have those opportunities, you're so grateful for them, and you take the good with the bad. And was it bad being traded? I don't think so. It's part of the game, and I went and really enjoyed my experience in LA. Almost won a cup there. In '93, we came really close, and I still got tons of friends in the organization, and so I was blessed to have the Rangers and the Kings, and then finished up with the Sharks for 5 years as well.
Of course, your sister worked for the Kings as well. When I was doing some broadcasting in the New York area, I was doing the Islander games back then. She was with the Kings.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, so it's all part of the family there. One thing I wanted to get to, and I know you've been great with your time today, and I want to rush through this. So, maybe during the off season, we can come back and talk more about this, but I certainly respect, everything that, that you've been through, that you've battled, the Bill Masterton Trophy and what led to you, the head injury and, you coming back and continuing your career there. And of course, being a cancer survivor more recently, and giving back with the ranch, which we've talked about on this show as well, being on the board there. I know you're a big part of the gala back in October in New York that raised over $1 million. If you can touch just a little bit about your relationship with the ranch and why it's so important to you and to give back in that way and give back to the hockey community, but people in general. With that.
Yeah, first I'll just tell you what the ranch is. It's a place to go if you're struggling, you're trying to get your life back in order, if you have an addiction, if you're just at a bad point in your life where you can't figure it out on your own, the ranch is a place for hockey players, former hockey players, family members of hockey players, anybody around our game that needs a place. We've because of Mark Pavelich, we lost Mark, that we all kind of remember of what his situation was, and he didn't have a place to go. And before he lost his life, that was one of his wishes, that he wished he had a place that he could go to that could help him get back on track. And because of that, his family and friends, put together a wish of trying to fulfill what Mark had wanted. So the good thing is the ranch has helped a lot of people. Some of my friends that have had to, kind of take a little time out in life, go kind of regroup, get their life back in order. So it's a place that I'm very proud to be part of. It's something that we're working on, trying to continue to grow and get better and make it aware. I mean, the realization is, and this is what I've learned since I've become part of the board, is there's all sorts of different struggles that we have to face during our lives. I mean, that's a fact, whether it's an illness, whether it's, family member dealing with different things, whatever it might be. And just because you're a professional athlete, just because you're a hockey player, doesn't exempt you from having the struggles that are real life struggles. And what we try to provide is an opportunity, like I said, to have counseling, to have a place to go where you can just kind of go regroup, take the time out, and get your ducks back in order. And so I think we've done a really good job. Like I said, we've had quite a few guests come through that have come out on the positive side and are doing really well. So we're just trying to make awareness to the players, the former players, the referees, anybody in the hockey family that has somebody that they know that might need some sort of counseling or help. We would be there for them to hopefully help in a way that's somewhat unique from the standpoint that it's the hockey world kind of rallying around this mission. And so far, like you just said, we went into New York. Gary Bettman was part of it. Bill Daly was part of it. We had tons of NHL players. Patty LaFontaine, Mike Richter came out. Paul Martin came out and spoke about different things and topics and difficulties of what it's like to be a professional athlete. And because of that awareness, more people have reached out to us to not only help us, but also that they have people that they might know that would need help as well. So we're growing. So thank you for bringing that up, Jim. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And we had Robbie McClanahan on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about it as well. And his relationship with Pav, of course.
Yeah, the 1980 Olympic team. We've done golf outings and different things in Minnesota. The ranch is located in just, I think it's west of St. Cloud, but it's an hour and a half from Minneapolis. And our Olympians from that 80 team that were Pav's teammates they show up, they give whatever they can, time and energy wise, to help us and sending the message out and then raising funds. And so Robbie's been a big part of it. Mike Ruzioni's been a big part of it. And I'm just going to tell you the part that's so special about that. We do these little special gatherings before the golf outing, and we get 8 or 10 Olympians to stand up there and sit in front of everybody with microphones in their hand. And they tell stories from the 80 team. I thought I knew everything about every one of those players and everything that happened during that time. Every year they tell us new stuff, man. So every year I get so fired up to go there and listen to those guys tell stories, because they are as colorful and as charismatic and as classy as any group of men. And I can't say that enough, how special that group of players were and are to USA Hockey. And that's why hopefully, knock on wood, this team wins this year. I'd love it to build more momentum for us to keep celebrating the 80 team. I know they got that great piece out on Netflix now, The Boys of 80, which is sensational that we keep reliving that story, because the one thing that you and I can say, we're old enough. Are you old enough to remember 1980? Are you old enough?
Of course. You and I are the same age.
Okay, we're the same age. So everyone says, hey, you're getting old. I said, no, I'm not old. Just so you guys know, you weren't there for 1980. I was. I lived that.
Yeah.
And so to be able to experience that firsthand, as opposed to being, hearing about it or watching the movie, you just don't understand what that team meant to us as not only hockey players, but as a country. So I can't say enough positive things about every person on that team and was part of that miracle team.
That is awesome. Great way to send you off to work to watch the United States women against Canada. And of course the semis tomorrow coming up as well. United States, Canada, maybe on the crash course on the men's side as well, getting to the gold medal. Tony, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really enjoyed this a lot.
Of course. Thanks so much. And let's hope when we do get back to playing NHL hockey, the Rangers build some sort of momentum as the season progresses here, and kind of figure out that path back to being the team that they were and should be, and hopefully will be in the near future.